Welcome to Programming for Designers. This is Trish Ladd, WIP400 Platt College. Database Basics. So what is a database? This is Tico, the Database Fairy from the Manga Guide to Databases, which is a fun little book and full of information about databases, how to use them, and how to write code for them. So she says that a database is a system in which data is shared by everyone. If you used one, you wouldn't have to keep useless data. What she's talking about is places that we store information. If we write stuff down, sometimes we can write stuff down in more than one location. It's a really bulky sort of way to create a system for managing important information, especially when we consider that more than one person may need access at the same time. So from our class book, it says that a database is a system of storage for data. Okay, makes sense, right? How we store data is in a collection of tables, and these tables are columns and rows. So we would have a number of different tables, like users, for example, might have a field called username and another field called password. And what might be inside of that would be username would be Trisvi, and password would be whatever I put as my password. Each of these tables create a place for our data to reside, and each of those pieces of data would be rows in our table. Most content management systems, if not all, use some form of database. So how does this work? We create what's called a relational database structure. We want to create databases that are designed to minimize the redundancy. We only want to have information in one location, and that means things like users have their own table, posts would have their own table, and so forth and so forth and so forth. And each of these items, like let's say I am a user and I'm making a post, that post might belong to me, the user. And so my user ID that was made the primary key in my user table is referenced by the post table as a borrowed key. So everywhere there is a post that I've done, the database can reference my user information, like maybe a link to my author page, or maybe my username, or maybe my avatar, or other things like that. And that would be based off of the user table, even though we're looking at a post. And we know what user authored the post based off of that borrowed key. And why we do this is for better integrity of data through this separation of information. If I have that borrowed key, let's say my user ID is 9, and every post that says user ID 9 can go back to the users table and reference my data. I don't have to have that data stored with the post every single time that I make a post. It just goes back to that initial row of data that refers to me, user ID 9, and gets that information and puts it out to the page. And this is how it does it. This is what's called an entity relationship diagram. So here we have users and posts and comments and categories. And these would be things that you would do in a blog type of content management system, much like WordPress. As I said, user ID, let's say my value is 9, username might be Trishvi, my password might be password, my email, user pick might reference where to find my avatar on the server, is admin would say whether or not I can edit other people's posts, so that might be a true false statement. A bio would have any sort of information that I wanted people to look at about who I am. And date joined might say when I joined the site. A post would say what day and time it was posted, maybe a title for the post, maybe the content for the post, who posted it. That would be back to user ID. If I was on a page that referenced who the author was, that would be back to my user ID. It would maybe put out my username. Trish Svi authored this post, thus and such post at this and such time by Trish Svi. Is published would be like a field that says whether or not this post is public or a draft, for example. Allow comments would allow people then to add comments to this post, referencing its post ID in the comments table. These lines reference a primary key to a borrowed key in each case. One is a primary key, one is a borrowed key. Comments, for example, we reference the post ID. A post may have many comments, but they all belong to only one post. So how do we think about this kind of thing and make an ERD? So we want to think about what pieces of information we need for each item. What are the things that we need for users? We need a username, maybe. We need an email, quite possibly. We need a password of some kind, etc., etc. Posts. What kind of stuff should we create for posts? Each of those things are going to need an ID because that's kind of the handle in which we can manipulate data with. And consider how these things relate to each other. So I mentioned earlier a post may have many comments, but a comment would only belong to one post. So that is a perfect place to say this comment belongs to this post in the comment data. So here are some examples of a customer and an order table. Who ordered this item, whatever it is. We can go to the product table and get the product ID of the item and therefore then get all of the data that's associated with that product ID. We can go to the customer table and get the customer ID of the customer that ordered that item, again with the foreign key. So there are four basic things that you can do with any database. One is to create data. That is the insert command. So it creates new data for the database. You can read data. That would be the select command. Whenever we use the select command, the database retrieves the current values of the rows of data that we selected. Most of the commands you will use will be to select data for output to a page or to potentially update the pre-existing data. We can update data, which basically would take the data that we got from the database and change its values. And then we can also delete data. Deleting data is one of the main reasons why you want to have a ID, something that makes it specific and unique. Because when we start issuing commands to the database, we want to tell it which row of data to delete. And one of the easiest ways to do that would be to find out what its ID value is. Power of databases. Databases are extremely powerful if they're made right and can be extremely flexible. We can include and exclude data just based off of a set number of conditions. I want to select username and password where the username and password equal the values are sent from the login. If I have a match, then I have a credentialed user. Another example might be, let's say I need to get a sales report for San Diego and I only want to know which new customers, maybe within the last 30 days, used coupons. Maybe I want to show the top 10 products based off of the most sales and quantity, and I can just list that out on the front page of the website, and this might encourage people to buy. There are a lot of database systems. MySQL is the one that we will be working with. It is owned by Oracle, but Oracle also, Microsoft SQL Server, IBM, etc., etc. There are a lot of different database systems. And these were the top 10 enterprise database systems in 2015. MySQL is the M in LAMP. That's Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. It is an open source enterprise relational database management system. The multiple storage engine architecture allows applications to take advantage of particular strengths of each engine, allowing for much finer grained control. Within a single database, you might have some tables using MyISAM for its speed, small memory footprint, and full text capabilities, while others use InnoDB for its support of transactions and foreign keys. You can even roll your own storage engine if you want to use MySQL as a front end to your proprietary data format. PHP MyAdmin is a very popular graphic user interface for MySQL. It does not come with MySQL. That's really important to know. There are many other programs that allow you to interface with your MySQL database. PHP MyAdmin is a third-party plugin. MySQL uses command line to execute its directives. So when we execute a query function through PHP on our pages, we are issuing our commands directly to the database instead of going through PHP MyAdmin. And PHP MyAdmin basically does the same thing for us. So it's easier to create tables using PHP MyAdmin rather than going through the process of command line coding. To use our PHP to execute those insert, select, update, delete commands. We can import data and export data from PHP MyAdmin, and in fact, that is something that I will show you how to do, just so that you can make sure that when you transport your data, that you transport it cleanly. Here's what a set of database tables look like. You can see that I have a database called Trish_blog040617. We have 4 tables: categories, comments, posts, and users. You saw that set of tables earlier in the ERD. This would be some data from the post table. So you can see I have the posts table highlighted. Here you can see the command, select all from posts. And here's all of the data. So here's the Browse tab. It shows us all of the data. If you do not see any data under the Browse tab, that is because you do not have any data in your table. Here's the structure of that table. You can see I have the post ID. It is auto incremented and it is a primary key. Post date, I've stored the date time. So all of these different data types correspond to different things within the database. Post date, for example, we've put down that we want to reference the date time rather than timestamp or some other method of storing time data. Title, for example, we have varchar 100. That would be 100 characters in a title. Body, text. Text is quite robust. Text can store over 21,000 characters and is good to use when you need more than varchar's limit of 256. User ID would reference the user that created this post. Is published would reference whether or not a 0 or 1 if it is published or if it is a draft. Allow comments, same thing. 0 for not allowing comments, 1 for allowing comments. And then category ID would reference the category table. And that category ID will reference its entry in the categories table, which will give us the category name the post is associated with. In summary, databases are a collection of tables that are related to each other, and as such, they allow us to work smarter, not harder. We can use the entity relational model to create a smarter way of storing our data. MySQL is one of many databases available, and MySQL is free. MySQL uses command line to create, read, update, and delete data within tables, and it has integrated PHP support. PHP MyAdmin is a third-party plugin. There are many other graphic user interfaces that are available, but I don't know of any other ones that are free or come with your MySQL database when you use a host like HostGator or Bluehost or DreamHost. As always, I hope that this lecture has been informative, and I wish you happy coding.